And when you have Islam Makhachev, and you could say top of the food chain, arguably, right? You look into his pound for pound list, he might be that guy in a title fight against Ian Machado Garry. And Gary's one of those guys, Reed, that I wonder if there's a stigma or if that stigma is gone, that he was more hype than he actually is substance as he tries to get this crown away from Islam Makhachev. What are the numbers showing you in this main event?
Yeah, this is basically going to play out as a striker versus grappler, which is no surprise when you have Makhachev involved. He definitely owns the grappling game. But one thing you look for is what is the takedown defense of the opponent and how good are they at keeping this on the feet? And those are two things that Garry has actually been very good at. This is not the first grappler that he's faced, and yet he has managed to keep the fight standing almost 90% of the time, basically like 89% of the time, which is very unusual. You think about half the fight takes place on the feet, and then there's clinch, and then there's ground game. He has a very good way of keeping the fight up, which is where he has an advantage. You look at the size, the guy is enormous for a welterweight. And so that's something that I don't factor into the models, is the fact that Makhachev earned most of those high performing metrics, but against smaller opponents.
That's right.
He just recently moved up. So while he does have welterweight experience, it's not a lot. The statistics that I'm looking at were earned at lightweight against smaller opponents. So that is an unusual factor here. When I ran the models, even with Makhachev as a heavy favorite, they actually came out as a wash, which means, yes, I agree he's a favorite, but there's something in there I'm not seeing value in. And that is one of the tricky things about neural nets and machine learning, is that sometimes you can't really explain why it's saying something, but learning to back off what looks like a layup for a grappler is actually something that caught my eye. And then you layer in the factor that Garry has very good takedown defense, 80%. He's especially good in the clinch, which is where Makhachev lands most of his takedowns. That's what he does. Push you against the fence, eventually drag you down. Garry has that size. He might be able to use the underhooks and really elevate this and keep it standing, at least for an extended period of time. And so during those distance exchanges, he's going to be the busier fighter, the longer fighter, much longer fighter. And you got to think like he might be winning those exchanges. And when does he get taken down? So while I say that this is a pass, it's not factoring in the size. If there's some folks out there that are like, is it crazy to think that Garry might have a chance here? I'm not disagreeing with that. I think he does have a chance, especially if he is able to survive those clinch attempts and switch around, create distance, work some strikes, and repeat. That's the cycle. Either way, my angle here is on the over. I don't think Garry goes down easy. He certainly doesn't put Makhachev away very easily, because Makhachev also has the outlet of just continuously diving for takedowns. So that's how I think this fight evolves. I think it's just going to be back and forth. It'll be interesting to see how long they spend in each position: distance, clinch, ground. And Gary's profile is someone who is good at keeping this exactly where he wants it. Obviously, he's facing a different animal than Makhachev, who's also very good at keeping the fight where he wants it. He spends basically half of all octagon time on the ground controlling his opponent. And when you do that 2.5 minutes out of every round, you're probably going to win the round. And you're also going to get opportunities for submissions, which is what happens with Makhachev and even Khabib before him. So, everybody knows the narrative here. The statistics do back that up, but I am not just saying that this is going to be a layup for Makhachev the way maybe the early odds implied. So he's still a favorite, but I'm going to be passing on the money line.
And right now, Makhachev right now is a 340 betting favorite against Ian Machado Garry, plus 270 on the comeback. You mentioned Khabib Nurmagomedov in the corner, obviously, of Makhachev, so you know that's going to be some of the things that are taught and drilled into him, looking for those submissions, as you say. That total on the round prop here in this championship bout is set at 4.5. It is juiced heavily to the over at $1.80. But to your point, Reed, if you're on the Makhachev side and the respect level that your model is showing here for Garry, that the better price point to lay, if you're going to lay it here, would be on the over $1.80 versus Makhachev at 340. Does that make intuitive sense to you?
Yes. Yeah. If he's doing what he wants to do, he clearly stretches this fight. If he's not doing what he wants to do, if the size is too much of a factor here, he's not going to go down easily. And even if he does go down, Gary's going to be in a very weird spot of like not wanting to chase him. So Gary cannot be too aggressive, even in the striking game, because when you're too aggressive, you press forward, which is his nature. He is the busier striker. You then open yourself up to counters, changing levels. So I don't think. Unfortunately, I think Gary does have to play it conservative. It's going to be a very uphill battle. I do think in the end, Makhachev probably wrestles his way to victory. But I think based on the prices here, you got to go with the over.
Yeah, and I like that. And with that angle that you have, Reed, I'll be looking for the fight, obviously, to go the distance, either man to win by decision might be a good way to go as well. But I'm picking up what you're putting down there in that main event. And before we move on, just your thoughts when you've watched Ian Machado Garry, because I don't think my opinion ever really changed too much. I think early on, people kind of looked at him as a Paddy Pimblett type. And do we really take these Euros that seriously? I think Paddy has kind of changed that perception of himself. We take him seriously, and it sounds like the model does too, right? That Machado Garry has arrived.
Yeah, that's right. He has good numbers. And again, the position game, which is not, it's actually not a statistic that's readily available, to be honest, to the public. I mean, you got to buy Vimetric data to get this level of detail. But the fact that he keeps it standing so long, in particular, his takedown defense in the clinch is actually quite good. Normally, that's an area where the takedown success rate goes up. It's in the clinch versus shooting from a distance. That's going to be the lowest success rate. And so Makhachev and others before him, those guys that push you against the fence and really wet blanket you and eventually get you down on the third, fourth attempt, it's being able to defend those situations, create space, force it standing, and reset. That is a very subtle skill. It's hard to find in the data. And Garry is one of those guys. He's very big and he uses that very well. It's like John Jones. There's people who use their size and reach, and then there's guys, unfortunately, who don't. So Garry learning how to use that size and reach, create space, leverage that range that he has, that's a skill set in and of itself, let alone from the advantage of being the bigger guy. So those are things I'm looking for that are not always apparent in the numbers.
There's a great comp, by the way. I know a smaller version of, say, a John Jones, but the way he uses those leg kicks, use the jab, and kind of keep fighters away when you need to keep them away, that's a great comp there for Ian Machado Garry. And I think, as Reed pointed out in the main event with this on Makhachev against Ian Machado Garry here for the championship, and you're looking at 4.5, that maybe the model does respect Garry, even if it doesn't lean his way. And I love the way he phrased it. It was kind of like it makes him rethink what the model might not be taking into account. But there's something there that's saying, hold off, even though the lean is towards Makhachev, that maybe not at that price point at minus 340.
Yeah, so it's always interesting having Reed on because I'm always curious, will my model line up with his? And I'll let everyone know. There's a couple we do, but there's a couple we don't. So we'll hit some of those and hey, one of us will be right and you get a winning play on the show, guaranteed. But looking at Makhachev and Garry, I mean, while Makhachev isn't an undefeated fighter, he might as well be because it's hard to find flaws in his game. I mean, we're talking about he is tied for the most consecutive wins in UFC history. 16 wins. He's tied with Anderson Silva. That's not an easy feat, especially, we're not talking about 16 wins in a row in MMA. We're talking just in the octagon when he's been with the elite. And you talked about it last show. His last loss was 11 years ago.
Oh my God.
At, what was it, the Cormier Gustafsson event? And I had to look up, because you mentioned that. I'm like, who beat him? And it was a knockout loss, by the way, to Adriano Martins.
We all remember that like it was yesterday.
And I was curious, what did Adriano Martins do after knocking out Islam Makhachev? Where did his career go? Well, since then, he is 1-6-1 in his professional career.
Amazing.
He's won one fight since that. So at least he gets to tip his hat and say, I was the last guy to beat Makhachev. But the numbers, man, he is a tough guy to pick apart. I mean, XR percentage, 86%. You're talking elite. And that fight style always breeds that kind of expected round one. I mean, 86% is a guy who's controlling every minute of the cage, and that's what he's going to do when he gets you down. He just pressures you. Now, Garry, 69%, that's not bad. That's actually very good for a guy challenging for the belt. It's just he's facing Islam Makhachev. Now, Reed mentioned it. Garry does have a size situation here. You know, he is the longer, taller fighter here. And, you know, I was curious how that would play in Makhachev's welterweight debut when he fought for the belt against JDM. And I mean, he ticked every box for me. word is, and you can only trust camps so much, but word is he's stronger and looking better at 170. And I don't doubt that for an elite athlete like that he's taking it seriously and now starting to really come into form at 170. But looking at the numbers too, obviously Makhachev doesn't have a striking advantage. He's not a stand-up striker. I mean, he only puts out 2.45 significant strikes per minute. He is tough to hit, though. 1.45 significant strikes absorbed per minute. He is out of the way. He is a ghost. And next thing you know, he's grabbing your leg, right? And he's taking you down. Now, Garry, he does have that reach advantage, and if he can use it to strike, he can win a striking battle. 4.78 significant strikes landed per minute, 1.92 differential. So he's tough to hit back, and it's usually that size and range that he's starting to learn to use. 2.86 absorbed per minute. They both have knockdown scored. They've both been knocked down, but that's probably not where this lives. We're looking at the grappling, and we're talking a whole different level of grappling here. 87% control rate for Islam Makhachev in clinch and ground time. Once he closes the gap, it's essentially over for you. And we're talking about 51% time in control when he gets you on the ground. I mean, Reed said it best. If you're on the ground, you're most likely spending over 2.5 minutes on the ground and most likely losing that round. So it's tough to see a path for Garry. Now, Garry does have great takedown defense, 80% takedown defense. That's very good, especially entering championship level. It's just, is Islam a level above everything he's faced? Most likely. Now, is there a path there? Potentially. Where do the numbers go? They're going to go Islam Makhachev's way, 100%. But it does reserve and it does hold back, as you can see on the screen, tier 5. It's kind of that cautious favorite for me. And especially when you look at the odds at minus 340. I mean, my model's only seeing a 65% win probability for him. At those odds, at a guy that we kind of see as inevitable and undefeatable, or defeatable, not defeatable. 65% isn't exactly a comfortable prediction that I feel comfortable in. I'm not saying Gary's going to take this hand and go bet the dog. I'm just saying be cautious. Maybe don't use this if you're going to have it as a parlay, make sure you have a way out. I think the over, in the way that Reed and you guys talked about it, I think the over is the smarter, safer bet here, especially considering the odds. I think it's minus 180 right now for the over. But right now I'm reserved on actually playing Islam Makhachev here.
This is exactly the way that I see it. I love that the numbers kind of bear it out with you and Reed. To me, it's only dog or pass, right? At that price point at minus 340, it's not that I don't think that obviously the champ should be favored and Makhachev should be favored, but not that sizable for me. I do think the over is where I'm going to end up getting here at minus $1.80. And I know people are going to go, well, do you really want to lay that price point? Much more than I would laying 340, because if the propensity, Rob, is that this fight's going to hit the cards, and you're laying 340, that 3 judges see it the same way, especially if it stays standing. Like if this isn't dominant grappling and he's holding down Machado Garry for 5 rounds, and it's easy to see that the champion's going to retain the belt that way. If this stays striking and it becomes a point counterpoint fight, that's exactly what Ian Machado Garry wants. That's where he's slick. And I mentioned kind of that John Jones comparison with those front leg kicks that he might use to deploy to keep Makhachev off of him. I could see it playing out stylistically, not so much finishing. And that's why I think the over, you can get there at over 4.5 at minus $1.80. And then all of a sudden, Rob, I'll tell you this, you hit the cards, I'd much rather be on the massive underdog than I'd rather be on the massive favorite if we get to one of those point counterpoint striking matchups. And I think we could see it play out like that. Again, if the takedowns come, tip your cap to the champion. Machado Garry's just defending off his back. He's got no offense that he can really muster, and it's going to look like one-way traffic here for the champ, but maybe in a boring 5-round decision. But that still gets us home in that over minus $1.80. Don't have a play yet on the side, but if you made me play it, that's the way I'd look. Garry by decision, because I think we're hitting the cards eventually.
I love that analysis, and you're right. Sweating out a minus 340 for 5 rounds, and especially if you saw at least 1 or 2.5 of those rounds being a standing battle because Garry was able to hold off maybe a couple takedowns, I'd be nervous on what those scorecards start looking like, because if he takes 2 rounds, that means he can take a third. And if he takes a third round, now you've got a huge sweat. So I'd rather get that over with at 4.5, knowing, I mean, we're talking about the only loss for Makhachev being a random knockout 11 years ago, and Garry only has 1 loss, and it was a decision. So these are tough guys. Most likely 5 rounds is what we're seeing.
Hey, I'll tell you this, if you're backing the champ here, the last thing you want to hear is we're headed for a 5th round, because at that point, you haven't been able to get him out of there. You probably haven't controlled him, and it's probably a little bit more competitive than you'd want a $3.40 favorite to be.